working at home, but unmindful of clock or calendar, the Vietnam struggle goes on.
During college, the U.S. government had the draft established. Well, I put one and one together and realized that if I stayed in college, I wouldn't get drafted. But when I was done with college, I would be drafted right away unless I was an officer. And if I was an officer, I would have some choice on what I wanted to do in the military, which is why I went into the Navy. I knew, well, the Navy's not theoretically on the ground in Vietnam. So they shipped me off to a small ship called an LST, Landing Ship Tanks, that drives up onto the beach. The doors open up, a ramp comes down, and tanks theoretically come out. But when our ship came ashore in Vietnam, the doors would open up, the ramp would come down, and beer cans would roll out. I did that for a year and a half. I watched in Vietnam. I paid attention, went into Saigon, Da Nang, watched the action going on, and realized this is really a war for the wealthy of the United States. It's a war to acquire more. It was not a war for liberation of the people. The people in Vietnam at that time were all being held in concentration camps. They didn't call them concentration camps, but they called them relocation centers. So I saw this going on, and finally I decided, I can't buy this. This war is not right. And I declared myself a conscientious objector. When I declared myself a conscientious objector, I wrote this long paper. It was, I think, about 28 pages long, explaining my religion and my grounds for being a conscientious objector. When I wrote that paper, I mailed it off to the underground press in the United States. That paper was a source of much consternation for the military, and they ended up coming into my house and taking out all copies I had of that paper. I've never been able to find any copies of that paper ever again. It absolutely got obliterated. It was a great document too, I loved it. They were very distraught with me. They shipped me off to a base in Guam. I was under base arrest for the next year.
And also, at that time, we were trying to have a baby and weren't having a lot of success. But finally, I found out I was pregnant and I was very, very excited. And he was very excited. And about 2 months later, we got sent home.
They gave me an honorable discharge and told me I could go back to the United States. During that next year, my wife and I, Lori, we moved to Eugene, Oregon.
And so I decided to go back to school up in U of O, University of Oregon.
I studied education, and I decided alternative education sounded very interesting to me. And I decided to take the classes, and I took the classes for 1 year. Well, during that year, I became involved in the anti-war movement on campus, conducting demonstrations, became a draft counselor.
He became very, very active in the student union underground for people who were trying to go to Canada to avoid the draft. Being the loyal wife that I was, I went along with it. I ended up having a baby, me.
My dad and my mom were kind of like living different lifestyles at that point.
And towards the end of the year, I decided to move my wife and my child
to a commune out in Monroe, Oregon.
And I went to my professors and I told them, look, I'm going to write my final paper on raising children in a communal environment. And all my professors said, no, that's not appropriate. You have to stay here in school. And I looked at them, I thought about it for a couple of days, and I said, no, I don't think I do. And I said, adios. And I moved my family out to the commune.
Moved to the commune when I was approximately 5 months old. My mom was not really a willing participant in that move.
He said, you're going? And like the good wife I was, I said, okay.
And I believe that's part of the downfall of their relationship.
We drove up this road and 6 little kids came running to the truck. Naked, blonde hair, dirty, oh my gosh, and laughing and smiling, and I didn't want to get out of the truck. And Rob said, come on, you're getting out of the truck. So I had this little baby that I was very, very protective of.
That was a really scary experience for her. But once she was there and she met these people,
I found myself loving it. I love the people, I love that life. And so it opened my eyes to the fact that there was more than I had ever known about as far as my being a woman, a mother, a wife.
I'm not sure when they legally were divorced, but I know that they pretty much were separated by the time I was about 6 months old. And we continued to all live at the commune together as a family. So as a child, I really wasn't aware of the fact that my parents were not together.
We didn't have any anger towards each other. We had both gone our own paths and had to go our own paths. And we accepted that. You know, we weren't right for each other.
That was very healthy for all of us children who grew up on the commune to see that our parents still treated each other with respect, even though they were in relationships with new individuals. So I feel very fortunate that I grew up with parents that were able to keep a relationship and have respect for each other.
I think we began with about 6 couples and about 4 single people.
All the adults had gone to college and either had master's degrees or were in some way educated people from good families. We traded roles. Men took care of kids, they learned how to cook. The women drove the tractors, worked on the farm.
My core foundation and who I am and my beliefs came from the mentality of open-mindedness and just accepting and loving everyone, which, you know, is one of the things about the commune lifestyle that I really am thankful for and feel has been a benefit to me in who I ended up as a person.
We had men's meetings and women's meetings and family meetings where we discussed problems and issues, how to raise the children, because we were raising the children communally.
The commune was one big family and there was 6 kids, so it was kind of like we were all siblings and all of the adults were our collective parents.
I think their goal at Earth's Rising, which is the name of the commune, was communal family and communal marriage.
A new way of life for people. So we really were trying to pursue that.
If you wanted to live there and wanted to be part of that group, you had to be open to sharing everything. You know, I knew growing up there that meant work and food and chores and childcare and all of that, but in my adult life it has been explained to me that also meant that
all the marriages were supposed to, you know, split up and be with other people, and like a group marriage.
And to say that this person is my wife was a form of ownership, or that's my husband was a form of ownership, and it was not politically correct to be owning a person. No longer were we husband and wife. We were men and women, and we all had choices on who we could relate with and be with at night. And if you were on child duty one night, you get the waterbed room the next night.
And we did that.
We tried all different types of relationships at that time. And
I think the drugs helped. We did MDA, we smoked dope almost every day, made homemade wine. So it was that culture of sort of being stoned, being hip.
the drugs and the alcohol just jumped out of the roof. I mean, we were doing drugs and alcohol all the time, and it didn't matter what type of drug we would do it. I remember one time somebody handing me a pill, and on the jar it said, "Do not use with alcohol." A light came on, and I took the drug and I took a drink. And to me, that made sense at that time. Acid was being done all the time. I did a lot of acid during those years.
It just was what was going on at the time.
What we were all looking for, though, was peace and happiness, because we weren't happy where we were coming from. We weren't happy being married couples. We weren't happy with the individuals we were. And so we were all searching for what is the right thing. And we were really trying to find that. Most of the time when I was living on the commune, when I had any clothes on, it was a loincloth. I'd go to town in my loincloth and maybe a shirt on, go drinking with people in town, and just, I was a bit outrageous then. My hair was long and frizzy and looking a little bit Jimi Hendrix style. And
He kind of looked like a Ted Kaczynski.
that was the way it was. And I lived that way for 7 years, 8 years. They became somewhat of a blur, though, to me. I realized when I was about 29 that I did not really know what happened to my 20s. They were gone. Holy smokes, I'm 29, I'm going to turn 30 next year? I had already gotten divorced by now. My first wife had gotten married to one of the men on the commune who had decided that he did not like the open lifestyle, open relationships.
And so the commune said, you can't live here anymore. He and I had to leave, and we left with his 3 kids and my baby. And Rob, at that time, got involved with other women at the commune, and he wanted to still be part of his daughter's life, which was important.
Probably my most vivid memory is when he took me on a cross-country hitchhiking adventure, and his girlfriend was with us. And I believe we hitchhiked from Eugene to Maine. So it was quite an adventure for a 5-year-old. I have memories of my dad and his girlfriend hiding in the bushes, and me standing out on the highway with my thumb out. And I specifically remember us running from a house and hiding in a cornfield because there was a drug bust. I just remember watching this all go down, and it was just normal to me, you know, it's just part of life with my dad. It just makes me laugh now because as a parent, it's just crazy to think that you would do that. But again, we're living in a different time period.
After a while, he left the commune too, and he went and bought his own farm.
I lived on that for a while, and then sold that and came back to the commune area and met a woman, and I traveled to Central America with another woman, ended up getting hepatitis, came home to Eugene, Oregon, sicker than a dog. I went to my ex-wife's house. I said, Lori, you know, I need someplace to recover. Lori said, yeah, you can sleep on the sofa. And we were friends.
And they continue to be friends, which is an interesting quality.
While I was recovering at her house, she told me, hey, there's a young woman out at the farm. You should go meet her. She's about 10 years younger than you. She'd be good for you. I said, oh, okay, I'll check this out. And so my first wife actually introduced me to my second wife, the woman who became my wife, who still is my wife, Anne.
Well, I met Rob when I was 20 years old and living in a commune in Oregon.
I went out to the farm, met her, wooed her.
And I was impressed by his level of confidence and his competence, and what a nice, loving, supportive person he seemed to be.
I was still involved in this relationship with the woman I went to Central America with, and at the time that was okay for a while, and then finally they told me I had to make up my mind, and make up my mind between 2 women. You know, I thought I had died and gone to heaven when I had this dual relationship going, but no, that wasn't acceptable. And so when I was told I had to make up my mind, I joined Vista.
And he went to Alaska, and I was pretty heartbroken initially.
I said, well, I'm not ready to make up my mind. I'm going to go do some public service for about 3 months in that program. I had a girlfriend who I picked up in Juneau too, but I was still thinking about this woman back in Eugene, Oregon, Anne. And finally decided, this Anne person is probably the right person for me. I think I'm going to go back and woo her. Caught a ferry to Seattle and hitchhiked down to Corvallis, Oregon area where my truck was parked, and picked up my truck and drove to Eugene, and arrived in Eugene in the middle of the night. And she was shocked to see me because she didn't know I was coming, and she let me in, and we've been together ever since. 2 hours later, after I came back into her life, there was another knock on the door, and a young man who was trying to woo her was saying, hey, Anne, can I come in? To which she said, no, I'm sorry, Bjorn. Rob's back. Oh, hi, Rob. Good night. And yeah, but it was that close, you know. I think if I'd come home a couple hours later and she was in a relationship with him at that point, my whole life would have changed again. You know, it's funny how life works. A few minutes here or there sometimes can change your whole life.